Hi everyone, this is Stephanie from the Pasadena Public Library, and today I'm going to show you how to make an adjustable strap apron, just like this one. It has a casing which includes the strap, and then it ties in the back. I've also added extra large pockets to the front and a breast pocket here to hold a pencil and a phone. This is a really easy pattern to customize. You can easily make it wider or narrower, or lengthen or shorten it, and you can add as few or as many pockets as you want. Alright, let's get started. For this project, you'll need 1 yard of fabric to use for the body of your apron, and then for your strap material, you'll need 3 yards of cotton twill tape or 1/4 yard of fabric to use to make your own straps. You'll need coordinating sewing machine thread, your 3 pattern pieces, and a large ruler, and then something to mark your fabric with as well as your cutting tools. You'll need another 1/4 yard of fabric to cut out your pocket pieces. Now you'll want to fold your fabric in half, selvage to selvage, so that the fold is parallel with the selvage. I have folded it in slightly less than in half because I'm working with very wide fabric. Now I'm going to just place the apron pattern piece right along the folds of the fabric. Now before you cut anything out, I do recommend looking at the finished dimensions of the apron and comparing that to your body. Now the top of the apron across your collarbone is going to be 10¼ inches wide, and the full length of the apron is 33 inches long. And from hip to hip, it's going to be 25½ inches. So if you want to make your apron 1 inch wider, what you'll do is place it 1/2 inch away from the fold. And because it is on the fold there, it'll actually add a full inch. And of course, if you wanted to make it narrower, you would just do the opposite. So if you wanted to make it, say, 1/2 inch narrower, you could just have the pattern piece go over the edge of the fold by 1/4 inch. I'm just going to cut the pattern as standard. I'm not going to make any adjustments to the width of it, although you will see that I don't have quite a full yard of fabric here, so my apron is going to end up being a little bit shorter, about 1 inch shorter. But this is still a very generously sized apron, so I'm not worried about that. If you do want to lengthen or shorten your apron, it's very easy to do. You just either add or subtract inches at the bottom of the apron. Now, again, with the fabric folded along the grain line, I am going to place this pattern piece for the apron yoke, just like this, matching the grain line mark, and I'm going to cut out 2 mirrored pieces. So because we cut this with the fabric folded, you'll get 2 pieces that are mirrored from each other. The original Big Chef pattern calls for a pocket piece that is 8 inches high and 12 inches wide. I decided I wanted to have an extra large pocket, so I just decided to draw my own pocket on here with some chalk. So for my pocket, I am cutting out something that is 18¾ inches wide and 10¼ inches tall. So you can draft your pocket to be whatever size you want. Just remember to add 3/8 inch to each of the sides and the bottom, and then 3/4 inch to the top edge to account for your seam allowance. I also decided to cut out a little breast pocket. For that, I cut out a shape that is 6¾ inches wide by 7¼ inches tall. For our aprons, we'll need straps that are 1 inch wide by around 96 inches long. To do this, I've cut 3 strips of fabric that are going to be 32 inches long by 2.5 inches wide. And I've placed my fabric on the fold here so I can cut those 3 strips as just 16 inches long, as that's a lot easier to work with. So I'm going to mark off 16 inches and then go up 2.5 inches and do it again. And I'll cut 3 of these and then stitch them together. This strap length is designed to tie in the back. If you prefer to have a strap that wraps around your body and ties in the front, you may want to add an extra yard in length. Because it can be kind of tricky to press under a curve, we're going to use a special trick to do it. Take your 2 yoke pieces and pin them so they are right sides together along that larger outer curve. Then, using your longest stitch length, you're going to baste that outer rounded edge together using a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Place your basted together yoke pieces over the end of your ironing board and press that seam allowance open. Then you can use your seam ripper to separate these 2 pieces and give them another press. Now, while we're at the iron, you're going to fold over the top edge of your apron to the wrong side by 3/8 of an inch and press. Then fold it over to the wrong side by another inch and press again. Then repeat this with both sides and then the bottom, pressing over by 3/8 of an inch and then an inch. Set your stitch length back to your standard length, about 2.5, and then go ahead and stitch down all 4 hems. First, I'll stitch the top, then I will unfold that hem at the bottom edge briefly and stitch down the sides, then refold the hem at the bottom and stitch the hem along the bottom edge. I like to use this tailor's awl to help me position the fabric properly. It's sort of like an extra metal finger that you can help to maneuver the fabric. Now we're going to take our yokes and make sure that they fit properly. They should be 1 inch longer on each side here. So I'm just going to measure and make sure they haven't stretched out. Now I'm going to iron over to the wrong side each end of the yoke by 1 inch. When cutting out your pattern, you should have cut a little notch on one end of the yokes, and that is the one that goes along the side. So make sure you position that correctly and go ahead and pin your yoke on there so that it is right sides together on the body of the apron. Then repeat with the other side. Now we're going to stitch along this edge using a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Anytime you start stitching on something really thick, you'll often need to use a seam jack. Here I'm using just some folded over fabric at the back of my presser foot to level it out. Now press the seam allowances towards the body of the apron. Then go ahead and press the yoke over to the wrong side of the apron. Pin in place and repeat with your other yoke. Edge stitch right along this curve to close up our channel. Then repeat with the other side. You'll want to stitch together your strips of fabric that you're using to make your straps. Place 2 strips right sides together and stitch them using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Then press the seam allowance open. Repeat until all of your strips are pieced together into one long strip. Somewhere along the middle of your strip, you want to mark an area about 4 inches wide that you will leave unstitched. Then fold your strip in half lengthwise, right sides together. Starting at the folded edge and using a 1/4 inch seam allowance, you're going to stitch across one short end, then pivot and stitch all the way down to where you made that mark. Backstitch when you get to your first mark, then skip to the second mark, backstitch again, and keep stitching all the way down to the end. When you get to a 1/4 inch away from the end, pivot, then stitch over that short end. Clip your corners. And then we're going to turn out this tube. So here you see is the area that is left unstitched. Take one of the short ends and start to pull the 2 sides away from each other and push the end inside. Then use a blunt tool like a knitting needle or chopstick to start pushing that end up through the inside of the tube. Keep scrunching it up until you can pull it out through that center hole. Then repeat with the other side. Now press your whole strap so it's nice and flat and the seam is running right along one of the edges. Find the unstitched area at the middle and edge stitch this part closed. If you're using cotton twill tape instead of making your own strap, all you need to do is hem the very ends of your strap by double folding it and then stitching it down. Attach a safety pin to one end of your strap, then feed your strap all the way through, starting at one side, then go up through the top and down through the other channel. I like to do the optional step of finishing the sides and bottom edges of my pocket pieces. This way I won't have any fraying inside of my pockets. I'm using my overcast foot and a mock overcast stitch. You could also use a zigzag stitch to finish your edges. You don't need to finish the top edge as that part will be double folded and stitched down. Fold the side edges of your pocket over to the wrong side by 3/8 of an inch and press. Repeat for the bottom edge. Now fold the top edge over to the wrong side by 3/8 of an inch. Then press. Fold it over another 3/8 of an inch and press again. Now stitch the top edge down at about 1/4 of an inch away from the edge. Repeat for all pockets. Now I'm folding my apron in half and creasing it so I can find the center line. I'll do the same thing with my pocket so I can help line it up right in the center of my apron. It's a good idea to try on your apron and pin your pockets in place to try to figure out where you might want them on your apron. Measure up from the bottom edge or down from the top edge to make sure you're pinning your pockets on straight. You can also measure the sides to make sure that your pocket is centered. If you have an edge stitch foot, I recommend using that for the next step. You're going to stitch about 1/8 of an inch away from the edge of your pocket, starting at the upper right corner, back stitching, then stitching all the way around your pocket, pivoting at the corners. Again, I recommend using something to level out your presser foot when starting stitching on the pocket and when pivoting around the corners. Backstitch when you get to the other top edge. As a decorative element and to make your pockets extra secure, you can do double top stitching. For this, I'm just doing a second row of top stitching a little bit farther away from the edge, slightly less than 3/8 of an inch. For my last step, I'm going to sew some lines of double top stitching to put some partitions in my pockets. Use a ruler and chalk to mark lines where you want to separate your pockets. Then just stitch right over your chalk lines, remembering to backstitch at the top and the bottom of the pocket. And here's what the big pocket looks like once it's been divided up. Alright, so here is the finished apron, and I did make this apron for somebody else who's over 6 feet tall. If I were making it for myself, I probably would have made it a little bit narrower, a little bit shorter. But I do really love all the extra pocket space on this apron. Having a little place for your pen, a little place for your phone, and all your tools or whatever you need to hold in your pockets. So I do suggest kind of thinking about what you might want to keep in your pockets and then placing that in your big pocket to kind of figure out how you want to space those lines. Also, the strap here is designed to tie in the back. So if you're someone who likes to tie your apron in the front, you need to make it extra long, so you'll want to add about 1 yard to the length of your strap. So I hope you had fun making this project and you get a lot of use out of your apron. Happy sewing!